Welcome to the Strangers on the Way podcast. I'm so excited and honored to have today's guest, Marcy Bursac, with us. I met her a couple weeks ago in almost like a snowstorm. My friend Angelique got us concert tickets to a really amazing, new, innovative, music called Brave Jesus. And on the way back to the train station. We were walking in the snow, and Marcy and her sweet daughter gave us a ride to the train on a whim. And oh my goodness, found out that she's doing big things and just can't wait to hear more on the podcast. So, Marcy, welcome. Thank you for giving us a ride, and thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for who you are. Would you just start out sharing with listeners a little bit more about who you are?
Well, I'm still hearing the squeal because it was like I had my windshield wipers on the highest speed because it was I love snow, so it was beautiful. But I
Yeah.
remember I was outside trying to get the snow off my car from this concert, which I learned also it's a new genre. So
Yeah.
instead of there being electronic dance music, there's Christian electronic dance music. So it's called CDM. I don't know. I felt cool to learn this a couple
Oh,
days ago. Woo. But I remember I was like trying to get the stuff off my car, but it's cold. And I'm in my head arguing with myself, going, you can do it, you can do it. And you all walk by, and I'm thinking, they're walking further than my car's away. And I cheer you on. I'm like, you can do it. And that's when, hey,
yes.
can we jump in your car? And I'm like, of course you can. And so it's just, but I remember in the like what felt like 5 minutes, like it was very short of a car ride. You guys were just around the corner to your station, a squealing in the car where
Mhm.
I was like, oh, we need to talk very long. Here's my card. And you were like, I interview strangers on my podcast. And the four of us just squealed like, what just happened? So
Yes.
my daughter and I left that just in awe and amazement. And we were like, what? Seriously?
I know.
Happened
It
in
was
the
amazing.
sky?
I'm so glad you
Oh
gave
my
me
God.
that. Yeah. It's so
I
fun.
love that. I love that. But yeah, we were in Chicago together. My daughter said she'd be happy to come with me to this like music I had found. And I'm an adoptive mom by choice. So I adopted my children, their biological siblings, and adopted them through the foster care system. I did not foster. That's often a myth. Like I did not go into foster care and end up with kids. I went and got licensed through the same system because there is a path where you can adopt children. In our country today, we have over 100,000 children that are just in foster care, stuck until someone adopts them. So, kind of through all that, I have a passion project where I help families across the country figure out, is that my path? How do I get through this? Because it gets really sticky and hard when you try to figure out like what agency will do that, and a lot of emotion in there. But by day, I work fully remote at a really wonderful tech company and really just kind of to me have like the best of both worlds. I get support and time to step away from a day and pay job to do ministry and to help our country really help children who are our future.
It's amazing. What like captivated you about the adoption process initially?
Well, so the adoption that's interesting, Lauren. I found that it's actually really complicated to figure it out. So I had gone, I think you had a previous guest actually. I think it was the one before we started recording, we talked a little bit about, I listened to an episode about someone and they had a connection to Moldova. And I was like, Lauren, this is wild. I was in my early 20s and I had gone to a service project with my church. At the time I was in Tennessee and we helped kind of this summer long, if you will, kind of vacation Bible school. And all these different churches partnered together. And instead of being like, well, our church is going to do a week and your church is going to do a week, they wove the curriculum. It was the most beautiful thing. So we went and did our week of curriculum in Moldova. And I spent a lot of time with the older girls. I learned in Moldova that kids are often dropped off at the orphanage simply because their families cannot feed and clothe them. So it's not a matter of they don't have adults to care for them. Their adults can't afford them. And I came back to the States, kind of really reflecting on what I just seen and very distraught. I was like, okay, well, I'm a little too close in age, probably like 4 or 5 years older than the girls I hung out with, but I got to do something about this. And so I had kind of declared in my heart that I'm like, I'm just going to adopt. Like, that's a way to solve this problem. And fast forward, my husband and I connect literally on a dance floor at a wedding and hit it off pretty fast. We knew each other from youth group a decade prior. And as our
Wow.
relationship progressed, I mentioned like, hey, if we're gonna like move forward together, I just need to make it very clear to you, like I am not intending on having biological children. I have no idea if my body can. I don't really want to find out. I just know I saw something and I want to help. And I thought, okay, this is probably a deal breaker because that's a pretty firm no. And he looked at me and said, well, me too. And I was like, what do you mean, me too? And he told me a story about his grandfather, Sam, who was a first generation immigrant from Serbia. And when Sam was about 7 years old, so Sam's parents both passed away of pneumonia. This time is like early 1900s in our country. We don't have as much healthcare and medicine as we do now. Sam had two older siblings who were adopted because a family got free labor by having them help on their farm, but left Sam to the wind. And he grew up in the back of grocery stores on the streets begging for food. Long of a short story, short of a long story, Sam ends up finding Jesus, creating a family. And my husband said, I always wondered, like, what would have happened if someone just would have helped Sam. And so that's really what led us into, well, we don't want babies. We want to help kids that are older. I've seen it. He's seen it too. And so it really was like demystifying that once we got married. I'm like, how do you do that? And it took us, Lauren, about 5 years because there just wasn't good information available. And we had ruled out like we don't want an infant. And we had ruled out like we want to do domestic. How do you do older kids domestically? And we just kind of had to figure that out. And there was a resource fair one Sunday at our church for Orphan Sunday, and that kind of started our whole process. But it was sort of abrupt because my husband was like, "Wait, I know I said yes, but like I'm not a few days to like try this on."
Yes. Wow. Oh my goodness, it's amazing that you both had that same passion. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really beautiful. And what
It
was
cer-
like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it certainly makes me feel less crazy when I'm out advocating and doing this work because it's not just me thinking, "Oh, this is what I feel called to," but there's definitely this shared like we both just have that, and he's had it really in his heart way longer than I have.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. What was your journey like? What did you learn? And then how did you like and start helping other families?
Well, we got licensed. So we are at this resource fair at church. They're starting a class to help families get licensed. At the time, I'm in Missouri. At the time they announced you can adopt through foster care. So that's what we did. We took these classes like that November. That was November. So by like February, we have all the right training. Again, never signed papers to be a foster parent. We were signed up to be an adoptive parent. But then, of course, as the system does, we got a call to foster right away. And we were like, and I felt my heart pull. I was like, Lauren, these girls, this story. And I called my husband, who's a teacher. He's teaching. I can't answer his phone in the middle of the day. And he was the one that was like, hi, do you remember how our bedroom is for like our house is set up for kids permanently? How do you think these girls are going to fare? And I was like, well, I don't know. They need a home. And he was like, you're saying no because we can't do this. And I felt like the biggest jerk, Lauren. And so that's like part of this path is you have to like stick to what you feel called to. So really for us, what happened is we knew we had talked about, like, okay, well, how many kids do you want to have? And we'd never had that discussion before. And my husband said two kids max. So we ended up that we were like, well, we're open to siblings, which was a big deal because I was like, I have three siblings. I want to keep siblings together. And through kind of a really crazy process, we were picked for our kids. They actually were very much an edge case. They had lived 5 hours away from us in our
Oh,
state. And we were supposed to have an interview, but really we were just called and they told us they picked us. There were 10 families that applied. We were our kid's seventh home, which is ridiculous. My daughter was almost 3. My
wow.
son was 4. And we were told, hey, in 4 months, all the legal stuff on the back end will be done. You can set your court date. And the law says across the country, the kids have to live with you for 6 months before we get to the court date. Well, Laura, that's not how it all works out because at 9 months in, when all of my friends that chose to have biological children, right? 9 months in, you're thinking about Lamaze class, you're thinking about packing your bag for the hospital. 9 months in for me, I found myself on my bathroom floor in tears,
Hmm.
crying out to the Lord, talking about how emotional this was and woe is me. And gently but firmly, I heard him say, this isn't about you.
Hmm.
And in my tears and in my frustration, I replied, excuse me?
Hmm.
And that same firm, gentle voice said, this is not about you. And I was kind of stunned because I thought, well, what do you mean this is about me? Like, this is hard. This is like really, really hard. And so I wiped my tears. My husband is an artist and he was doing something in our studio. So I went to him and I was like, okay, if we believe that God doesn't waste time and isn't making like he's not late. If we know that whatever is happening right now is deliberate, then there has to be a silver lining. And he was like, well, what are you thinking? And I
Hmm.
was like, I'm thinking that I should blog. I'm thinking if I could share with everyone we know what we're going through and that there are kids waiting, that maybe, just maybe, they would know too. And
Wow.
he agreed, but he said, well, two rules. We don't ever bad talk the biological family, and you're not explaining to anyone why our kids aren't care. And I was like, those are very reasonable things, of course. So blogged readership was really productive. Like there were a lot of people reading, but no one talked to me except for a friend's mom that would occasionally go praying for you. And I'm like, who are these hundreds of others people? Like people are interested. And then really what happened, Laura, what we learned in that process, and we did just talk about the journeys back and forth across the state once a month. We had to do this, and the behaviors go in this 4 week cycle where they'd have a biological family visit because we had to maintain that while they were still wards of the state. And then they'd come back they'd be a whole different kid for 2 weeks. And it was pretty wild. And for a week, you were like, you're the kid I remember. And then the whole cycle would repeat itself. And so you were like on a roller coaster. But then what happened is another 9 months later, we finalized the adoption. So 18 months. And out of the woodwork, friends and neighbors and friends of the neighbors were saying, can you come teach me how to do this? And that's really what catapulted everything. So it started in my living room. The pandemic shut that down and really expanded that to go online. And then eventually I wrote it down in a book so that I wasn't limited to do I know you? Do you feel comfortable telling me? Because it's very much, I've learned it's very sensitive. So oftentimes when we think about when there might be a pregnancy and the first trimester of that pregnancy, I often say that it's that kind of first trimester where you're really only telling your inner circle. And some people tell me that, and they'll come to me and have questions. They haven't told anyone in their family, maybe their significant other if they're in a relationship, but it's such a private decision. So if my tools can be available that you can make those decisions privately with information, that's really the overarching goal. So I learned a lot about how confusing it really is for everyone, but I could help really streamline that and provide good information.
That's amazing. Can you share? I know you have a couple books. Could you share just like a little bit about what's inside each one?
Yeah. So the Forgotten Adoption Option is the first one I wrote, and the subtitle is it's a self-reflection and how-to guide for adopting through foster care. I think it's like an hour and a half audiobook read. So all my books, I narrate all my books on purpose. So you can get an ebook, paperback, audiobook, and it really guides you through the step by step, and not just like this is the paperwork, this is what to do, but it's the really the early work of where's my heart. And
Mm.
if you're coming from a situation of infertility, like, are you really grieving that and recognizing that when you're helping a child in foster care, you're helping a child that's gone through abuse, neglect, trauma, loss, and you're really there as more of like a mentor. Like, yes, you're a parent, but like you're really mentoring and helping to cultivate in them in a way that's very, very different from a biological child that doesn't have that past history. I have other books for adults. One is called What to Know When You Adopt Through Foster Care. This is kind of a nod, but there's a book in the by like the child space called What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Sure.
And this is filled with 55 anonymous stories that just give you the hard, real, and fast on what it's like to adopt siblings, what it's like if a child's been exposed to drugs, what it's like if there's medical needs, what it's like to like start this process and stop. So they're all people that I know, but we found that if we could remove and preserve the anonymity of that, that we could help all these families across the country instead of you having to, again, tell me that you're thinking about this. And then I have a children's book called Are You a Forever Family? And this is used oftentimes in therapeutic settings. So play therapists love it. In elementary classrooms, we use it with a lesson. It's very Mr. Rogers-y. It's sweet and just talks and normalizes adoption as language and recognizing children. I've been in these beautiful classrooms where you've had kindergartners, third graders raise their hand in the middle of the lesson to share they're adopted. You have kids that maybe just didn't know before that that was a thing. So I've seen a kindergarten classroom, little girl raises her hand. I'm adopted. The little boy next to her is like, well, why? Because this child's never known of something like that, right? He wasn't trying to be rude, he just didn't know. And the teacher tries to move the lesson on. And I've seen this same bold girl raise her hand again and say, teacher, I want to share. And she talks about how she's a single mom. And the country where she was born, you can only have so many children. Her mom just always wanted to be a mom. And like she knew her story. This last school year, I had a third grade classroom where one child raises their hand to say they're adopted. They're midway through the lesson, and the third-year-old boy raises his hand and says, I'm in foster care.
Mm.
And then he says, that's all I'd like to say about that. But now his peers are aware of words and how to be supportive. And that's really what was really inspiration for my most recent book is called It's Okay to Talk About Adoption. And it's about taking those really kindergarten, third grade, the elementary classroom conversations and making it okay for all of us, right? Right? Like kids don't know the language always. Like maybe if you have someone in your family or it's your personal story. And so I'm trying to help workplaces, schools, faith communities be more supportive so we can be recognizing of like, what could be a little like, so for instance, like I've been in church settings where many of us don't think about this. Maybe there's a live feed of the sermon going. Well, when you're a visitor and maybe you have children in your care, you adopted through foster care, you're wondering if I sit too close to that camera, am I going to be on camera? And it's
Sure.
just little things like that, or even within the workplace setting, many, not all, but some workplaces have adoption leave or even leave if you're a foster parent, which is beautiful and supportive. But sometimes there's like a layer on top of that is how is it marketed? Are
Mm,
we calling it baby?
right.
Right? When you welcome an infant. And so I'm helping workplaces really think more broadly about that, that it's like if you look at the population, it's only about 2% of adoptive families adopt an infant across the globe. And like myself, like we didn't have infants. And so let's put a broader definition, call it a child, call
Right.
it children.
Uh,
So we're trying to just make it a place where we're being more thoughtful about how we're showing up and supporting adoptive families. And then I have a graphic novel. It's called Ready or Not. It should be out by August 2026. And that's going to be for teenagers, middle school, high schoolers. And it's about a young woman who is approaching her senior in high school and she's in need of an adoptive family. And you get to go through the inner turmoil of what that feels like to be at that age, at that crossroads in life.
wow. Oh my goodness. It's just amazing. Like, I'm in awe.
Aw.
Yeah, it's
I
incredible.
just I see gaps. I go pray about it. I Google. I look, did someone else already do this? And when
Yeah.
there's a no, I just continue to pray of like, hey God, like
Yep.
what do you want me to know now that I saw something? Like what do I do now that I can't unsee what you showed me?
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. How did you like what was the process? I'm curious just like as you're like creating all of these things and visit like how did you get into schools and um yeah, like how did the doors open for just this message to spread?
Yeah, that's pretty wild, Lauren, because my children's book, so this is a little plot twist here.
Yeah.
So it's like 2021, and I am literally leaving. I know you travel a little bit. I was leaving for a trip to Kentucky to meet up with a college friend and her family. I'm packed. I want to go to bed. I'm tired. And I lay my head on a pillow and I hear a voice say, "You should Google pageantry." And I roll over, I cover my ear, and I was like, I don't know where that came from, but I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
And the voice was like, seriously, Marcy, 15 minutes. And I was like, fine. So I get up, Lauren, long of it, like so many steps in there, but the short version is I end up going into pageantry. So I get to go to nationals, which was quite an honor. I ended up representing, so I lived in Missouri. I represented the state of Ohio because Ohio is where the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption's based. My husband and I had both used they have this toolkit. It's called the Adoption Friendly Workplace Toolkit. And it has all these templates. And we had taken that to our employers when we were nearing adoption and asked them for leave. And so they were very, very agreeable to that. And because of that, I stepped into pageantry. I'm doing it as it was United States of America's Mrs. Ohio 2022. This is crazy, Lauren.
Wow.
Did stuff I never thought I'd do. We're 5 inch heels. Like did stuff I never like. Never did I ever think I'd ever do this. But the thing was, somebody should help this have a more positive light. Someone needs to shine a really bright, positive light on these kids to help everyone see them. So I end up breaking their technology. I had over 7,000 votes for People's Choice. I'm able to give the Dave Thomas Foundation a $3,000 check. But I
Wow.
had, and this has a backstory because at the time was in grad school. I was doing a semester towards a master's in business. It took me 5 years because I was like, I'm mom and I'm going to plug into my kids.
Yes.
And I come back and on my schedule, I have worked ahead of my coursework that I don't have homework for a week. Because just in case I won a national crown, I wanted to be available for media, that kind of thing. And I thought, well, this is a stewardship opportunity. Like, I need to be so thoughtful about not just filling that time. And so I prayed about it and was like, what's the one thing, if I could just have a day to do it, I would do it. And I was like, I've always wanted to write a children's book. I, in fact, I don't know if you're familiar with this book. There's a book called Are You My Mother? It's this
Yes.
little bird. Okay, super cute book. Highly recommend. I
Yes.
had a copy of it because I've been trying to play with it for a while of like, how can I use that as inspiration? So what I did is I ordered several books on Amazon that had been used in play therapy settings, pulled several of my favorite things to read to my kids, ordered stuff from the library, and I'm sitting on a fuzzy blanket on my comforter. And I'm flipping through just thinking, I'm just doing research. And research that's a progress step, right? I will take that as like that success this week. And Lauren, would you I'm sitting there and I'm actually frustrated because on one hand, I'm seeing really beautifully written and really beautifully illustrated books. And they're not about children in foster care because oftentimes the books that are used in therapy and read to children who are adopted and fostered, they're kind of using the B quality
Mm.
team, whether that's there's typos, whether that's these illustrations are not quite as professional as they could be. And I'm frustrated. And so I open a book and I tell my husband, I said, somebody should. And I flip the pages and I flip the page and I flip the page. And Lauren, the Bible tells us this, Jesus tells us this, out of the overflow of your heart, your mouth speaks. And I caught in my ear that I was saying the words to this book. So I
Mm.
paused and I turned on my voice memo and I went back to the first page and I repeated what I had said. Somehow the Holy Spirit brought that back and I finished it and I just put it in Google Slides. It's just like, I'm like, I didn't know I was going to be doing that. So I had a children's book and I thought, I have a children's book. This is lovely. Like, this is great to have conversations. But what happened is about a year later, I'm at church on a Sunday morning and a mom comes to me and she was like, hey, my daughter has a Girl Scout project and she really wants to do it on adoption. Anyway, service is about to start. Could you just like think about that? So we're not even a couple songs into worship. And all of a sudden I was like, like all these like neurons in my head were like, Marcy, this is what your children's book is for. So we spent about 4 months together writing a lesson. We learned that, we had teachers helping us too. So we learned from a kindergarten teacher perspective. We had to be thoughtful in the lesson because we didn't want kids to think they were unspecial because they weren't adopted. We also needed to, because kids often default that pets are adopted. So it really came out of that. I had my husband's a teacher, so his school was very excited to help support us. They had walked alongside us
Wow.
in our adoption journey. So they were eager to help pilot the lesson. They've come with me across the state to speak, all because I mean, teachers get it.
Yeah.
Many of them, like they're the therapist, the school counselor to school at the time had worked in social services before working in a school setting. So there's this like, yes, we understand this.
Mhm.
And that's really where that all came from. And then when the graphic novel idea came about, I just kind of followed a similar, like, who do I know that's a teacher? Where do I want this to angle? And yeah, I've had a small team. I've got some teachers that have taught my children have come to the table. And then two other women, actually, this is funny. They're from the same youth group my husband and I were in.
Wow.
One lives in Florida, one lives several hours away in Missouri, and one is like an English language learners teacher, and one is a high school English teacher. And they've just been so eager to help. And so we've been meeting behind the scenes, making a lesson, and they've been like working on the artwork. We have a Facebook community across the world, really, of people that have teens or really care that have lived experience. We have some parents there that have been either fostering or adopted. So they've been able like little things in terms of the illustrator's so talented, but just little things that like are so critical to the story where the young woman lives in a group home
Mhm.
and there's a point where like the mom from the group home puts her hand on the teen and then for the dad to say, oh no, we can't have touch. And I'm like, that is such a critical part. And then to have young women who've been on my podcast that age out of the system or have been adopted, now they're adults, to say, hey, in this setting, she can't be in an office talking to the social worker. And I'm like, well, what was it like for you? Well, there was this couch and there was like a two-way mirror. And so we're redoing some of the scenes, right? Because the idea is there, but really getting the details right has been a really neat process.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Like, yeah, and just to have like realistic look at
Yeah,
what it's really like. Wow. And you
it's
had
so
mentioned prior to we started recording that when um, foster children are 18, all of their benefits go away, which is shocking. I didn't know that. Like, like, how can we change that? Do you have any thoughts?
I do have thoughts here. So some states are doing great things. Some states
Okay.
are saying we can have extended foster care. There's still paperwork. We
Yeah.
can extend it, and it varies by state. So some states are saying 21, 23, 25. Really love that. Really appreciate that. The gap is, so if we can all, I don't know how old we are listeners, but if we can flash back to like our 18-year-old self. So oftentimes we're in the peak of high school. Okay. And that peak of high school is where you're deciding, oh, what kind of job? Am I going to get further training? Am I going to live my own? Can you imagine being in the beginning of your senior year, weeks before graduation, your birthday hits? There are children in foster care who the foster families just kick them out. They're
Wow.
homeless in the middle of all of that happening in their life. And data shows us that they're at risk of incarceration, pregnancy, homelessness, right? Like those things. So what we need is really to have a more universal path of like yes through age 25. There's other things, and there's several examples in my newest book, It's Okay to Talk About Adoption, where higher education settings are building in beautiful support because it's a very small percentage of foster youth actually go on for higher education, as you can imagine why, right? Lack of support, lack of resources, lack of transportation. Um, where I went for my undergrad in Nashville, it's called Belmont University. They have specific scholarships for foster youth, but they're not like, oh yeah, let's just give you the money. They actually build in a support system. So
Mm-hmm.
you're supported. Their faculty also get time while they're working to get licensed at work. And these like they just swarm around the youth that are on campus. So it's not just, oh, this looks nice on paper, but it's like, no, like we're walking alongside these kids. We're helping them open doors. We're helping them be independent and stable. And so really we need more of that. And it doesn't mean college is always the path. It might be trade school. It might be somewhere else to work, but housing is a huge gap, transportation's a huge gap. And those are really areas, if we can kind of replicate it across the country, we have the models. It's just replicating those things throughout the country to make sure no matter, to me, I talk to my kids a lot about like, it really is disheartening when you think the roll of the dice, like if they would have been in a different state,
Yes.
there are some states that make it really extra difficult to adopt through foster care for varying reasons. But I'm like, could you imagine being in that state? Where
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of stuck in a system because there's not a path. And so it's like if we can just stop making people stuck, stop making kids stuck and really help them, I think that alone would be a huge thing, Lauren.
Wow, that's so good. Um, are you involved in advocacy in like these like states legislation federally as well, or do you see like things that can be fixed in that arena?
Yeah, yeah. So yes and yes. And accidentally, the my first book, The Forgotten Adoption, which is also the name of my nonprofit, when I published it about a month into it, Lauren, I heard separately from three different moms in my county. And remember, the book was written for the country, so I was kind of surprised. I was like, my county's reading this. Okay. Three different moms reached out, said, read your book. I can't do it. And I
Hmm.
said, why? And I quickly learned that my state had removed a line item in the budget that funded the path that I had taken. So I'm calling congressmen, I'm
Yes.
talking to a senator, I'm talking to governor. I had an opportunity to sit down with Senator Roy Blunt, who at the time was co-chairing. We have something called the Bipartisan um, Caucus for Adoption. And so he was co-chairing it. I gave him a one pager. I told him the money needed to be back. And he was like, you made this so easy. And I'm like, okay, that was actually pretty easy.
Wow.
Um, and so I'm really trying to help across the country there to be because some got removed and there's so many historical pieces here. And some of it is because it's politics. Like we have children in a foster care system that's governed by politics, right? People that are in terms. So sometimes things that move forward aren't implemented because they get 80, 90% there and then someone's term is over, they change jobs. And so I'm really trying to help our country one state at a time make that pathway more straight because it doesn't need to be this complicated. And one thing I would say, Lauren, like if there's one thing as your listeners, you know, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you're like, this was cool, Lauren. You met this stranger and like she's doing this stuff. It's super cool, but like I don't feel like adopting. I don't feel called to that. And that's awesome. What I would say, listeners, is two things. One, please help your friends, especially ones that are helpers. So that's teachers, those in the healthcare professions, first responders, therapists, caseworkers, social workers, those kinds of friends that you have, ministers, they're the people that are very often feeling this on their heart. And they might be in that first trimester stage and never have told you. So just be aware that maybe you should tell them, share this episode with them. And
Yeah.
two, what I want to share is that people think, oh, adoption, financially, I can't afford that. And I was in that camp for a long time. What I didn't know is through foster care, it's not a financial question. Out of pocket, you'll be out of pocket maximum of $5,000 per kid, which is less than a used car. It's a big scheme. And their health care is covered until they're 18. Their dental care is covered. Their therapies are covered. And then you also qualify for the federal adoption tax credit. So please don't let people believe that they can't adopt if it's on their heart because they think they can't afford it, because they can. They absolutely can.
That's so good. That's like, yeah, really, really helpful to know because I think I've had a couple of friends go through the process and that was like one of the questions, like, um, yeah, is it feasible? Oh, it's amazing. Well, yeah, as we close our time, I just like have a sense like that you're planting seeds in people's hearts or like something is coming alive in them that maybe has been dormant. What would you say to those people.
Lauren, I love how you sense things. Like it's just been so fun to get to spend time with you and to hear your heart. I think if there's something in you that's coming alive, you might be also flooded with fear. You might also be flooded with thinking you're crazy, and you're not. I mean, I feel crazy all the time just doing this work. So I'm like, how come no one else is doing it? Um, and so if you feel kind of like, I don't know what would happen if, like that's normal. And I think if there's something coming alive in you, one of the things that for me keeps resurfacing is I remember having a lot of fear around, well, what if we adopt a kid who? And I remember just sitting in my bedroom with my husband and going through various scenarios, I mean, the worst of the things, right? And I remember just spending so much emotional energy worrying, well, what if, what if? And in his very logical mind, compassionate self, he said to me, and so if we had biological children, would it be different?
Hmm.
And I think just keeping that in mind that like everything is a wild card in life, right? Like you have no guarantee of anything, but what I do know is that if you walk by faith, like doors will open or close.
Hmm.
And and I've heard in a sermon before, God doesn't move a parked car. So if you feel like I've never really taken a step on this, or I haven't, I've kind of felt this, I just don't know, maybe it's not the right time. It might not be the right time. The data shows us it takes 5 years to think about it and then to do it. And it should. It should take a long time because this is a life choice, right? Like you don't typically marry the person you met on Monday, right? Like that's just some do, that has happened, but like it's not the regular thing. And so listeners, if you at forgottenadoptionoption.org, I have tools you can use that can help you kind of discern that. I have a podcast as well, and there's information you can use to decide and discover, like, I kind of felt this, I wonder what, or I wonder this. And you can always reach out and ask questions too. So if it's on your heart, just take a step and explore.
So good. Marcy, thank you so much. This is like, I'm like amazed that one life can do this in, like, I'm just in awe. Thank you for your heart and yeah, for seeing gaps and actually filling them. Like, it's amazing. And I don't know if I like ordinary people can actually make such a tremendous difference. And yeah, I just hope the message keeps spreading and things change in each state. And um, yeah, thank you for like advocating for so many precious kids and families. And yeah, it's just amazing.
If I could adopt them all, I would. My husband doesn't think it's realistic to have thousands of children, but I'll tell you, Lauren, and I hope
Yeah.
this encourages your listeners too. I firmly believe, we're told many examples in the Bible, the minas, the talents, about the stewardship of money and our resources, and time's a resource. And
Yeah.
so for me, like, yes, I have a job and I do this, but man, with 10 minutes of time a
Yeah.
day or whatever that ends up, I set a little timer. Like there's something I can help with. And it's really, I think just time in and of itself is a very precious and fruitful resource when we give it to the Lord.
Yeah, so good. Oh, Marcy, thank you so much. In the show notes, I'll share all the links to your website and podcast and books. And yeah, listeners, if this is stirring something, like just pay attention to it. And I love that. Just one small step, small step. So good. Marcy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lauren.